Good to go. Welcome, fellow Toastmasters. This meeting of online presenters has now begun. There are no guests, so we shan't go through that bit. But for the members, if you haven't already renamed yourself, please take this time to do so. If you do not have a role, make it easier for our topics master, put an asterisk in front of your name. And that will give our topics master an easy way to find you in the participants guide. Where are we? If you haven't already done so, please get rid of any distracting background noise, turn off your cell phone, mute it. We do have members and oftentimes guests from many countries throughout the world. Thus, as a professional organization, we ask that you please be aware of language or word usage that may be considered offensive or otherwise insensitive due to cultural differences. Please note that we will be recording the meeting. Your video or audio contribution may be used for club marketing purposes. Also, please mute your microphone when you are not speaking. Today's theme is, what is his name? Henry David Thoreau. Please help me welcome our club president, DTM Lou Brown.
Thank you, Madam Sergeant at Arms, and welcome everyone. I'm very happy that you decided to join us today. I really appreciate you. As our Sergeant at Arms mentioned, we have no guests, so we're really just going to hop right into things. I have a few announcements I will make at the end of the meeting. So for now, let's just jump right into things and welcome our Toastmaster of the day, Toastmaster Hector Cabrera.
Thank you very much, Louis. I am very excited. This is the first time I get to be the Toastmaster of the day in the online presenters. Now, why I chose this team is because on July 12, 1817, Henry David Thoreau was born in the US. I came into contact with this author when I was exchange student in the US and really captured and captivated my attention. He was an American naturalist, an essayist, a poet, a philosopher, a transcendentalist. What is that? That belief that there is inherent goodness in people and nature. What a concept. And he's famous for retreating to a cabin at the Walden Pond in the woods to live in nature for a couple of years. And he recorded this experience in the book called The Walden. Even though he died in 1968 with little notice of the time, his influence has been felt over the last 100 years really strong. He was a strong proponent of abolition of slavery in the US, and his writing Civil Disobedience influenced people like Leo Tolstoy, Mahatma Gandhi, and Martin Luther King to fight against tyranny of the government and the small but good government. And this is one of the reasons that what I chose this topic. You will see in my background a few of the quotes that I like about him. Some of these I'm sure you'll recognize. Some of these have been basically recycled by new authors that basically mean what he said almost 200 years ago. Also, another day that is celebrated today. In 1862, during the Civil War, President Abraham Lincoln signed a bill authorizing the Army Medal of Honor. Why is this important? Well, I choose the word of the day because it's amazing what people will do for that thankful recognition and appreciation of the role that they play in a government, in our army, in our lives. And that is why I chose those things. And with further ado, I would like to introduce our support roles, because this is not my meeting. This is a meeting that is carried out by a group of very important members of the club. All of us are very important. They carry the meeting. And the first is our timer, Mary Dillon. You can please explain, Mary, what you're going to do today.
Thank you. As timer today, I will keep things moving along in the proper manner. When you have reached the minimum time, you will see a green background. When you reach midpoint of your time, you will see yellow. When you have reached your limit, you will see red, and you have 30 seconds to finish up. Mr. Toastmaster.
Thank you very much, Mary Ruth. Our counter, Roxanne Hussein. Roxanne, if you please.
Yes, I will. Greetings again, fellow Toastmasters, and Barry, we now do have a guest with us. The purpose of the counter is to note words and sounds that are used as a crutch or pause fillers by anyone who speaks. During the meeting, I'll be listening for overused words and inappropriate interjections, such as and, well, but, so, you know, and filler sounds such as I'll also note any double starts or when a speaker repeats a word or phrase such as I, or this means, this means. Notifications of these errors will be made by ringing the bell, except during icebreaker speeches, and I will give a verbal report when called upon by the general evaluator. Back to you, Toastmaster.
Thank you very much, Roxanne. Our next role is our grammarian. I want to thank David for jumping on it. We didn't have a grammarian, and when I presented at the beginning, he jumped on the opportunity. David, could you please explain your role?
Sure. I am a professional writer and editor, which means I appreciate a good sentence. As a Toastmaster, I've also had to learn to appreciate the fact that it's really hard to listen and concentrate and keep track of all that stuff, particularly if you get wrapped up in the speech. You might actually pay attention to what the person is saying as opposed to how they're saying it, and whether they've done good grammatical things or remember to use the word of the day, which is appreciate, which Graham has very considerately posted in the chat. So if you don't know what appreciate means, look at that definition and you will grow to appreciate it over the course of this meeting. Mr. Toastmaster.
Thank you very much, David. The next role is something that I just learned when I became part of Online Toastmaster, our watcher. Our watcher today is Lysian Soon. If you would please explain your role.
Hello, Mr. Toastmaster of the day, fellow Toastmasters, I guess. My role as a watcher will be pay attention to your online presence and give a report at the end of meeting. Back to you, Mr. Toastmaster of the day.
Thank you, Lysian. The next role, something I struggle with a lot, just to try to concentrate and pay attention to everything. I don't know how you guys do it. Our chat monitor today, Angela Heath. Angela, could you please explain your role?
Hello, Toastmaster of the day, fellow Toastmasters. I am serving the role of the chat monitor, which is unique to online clubs. So any sparkling language that you want to share in chat, any interesting phrases, I will capture them all and give a 1-minute report at the end. Back to you, Toastmaster of the day.
Thank you, Angela. And last but not least, our vote counter. Could you explain how we're going to do this today? Our vote counter today is Jeanette Francois.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Toastmaster of the day and fellow Toastmasters. My role today is to be your vote counter. Please send me your votes on the chat, and at the end, I'll give you my report. So back to you, Mr. Toastmaster.
Thank you. And now we go to the most important part of our meeting, which is listening to our fellow Toastmasters that have prepared a speech. We got 2 speakers today. The first one, Brian David Crawford, with his speech. Wait, what? Presentation Mastery Level 1, Mastering Fundamentals, Brian David Crawford.
I do not
I
see
was going to say,
Mr.
I don't think DDC's here.
Oh, wow. My bad. I should have paid attention to this. You're right, he is not. Do you mind then if we move on to our speaker number 2? I have in the agenda speaker number 2, Lukas Calafell, a reflection on project management, innovative planning level 5, demonstrating expertise on the high performance leadership. Second speech, Lukas Calafell.
VTM Con. Have you heard of it? I'm sure you definitely have. And what an amazing event it was. What I want to do for you all is to share an aspect of the planning and preparation for VTM Con. I know that all of you know that it took a lot of people, a lot of support. It took a lot of effort to make this conference happen. But I'm here to share with you about my experience serving as the program team lead for the VTM Con. To give you a brief description of what in general that role entailed was simply this: to create the program that all of you should have seen if you attended VTM Con, that was on the website, that had all of the information of day 1 and day 2, everything that was happening during that event. And that is what I was responsible for as far as putting a team together and working with them to put out this product. Before I could even start on getting the wheels turning with this, I had to think about one thing, and that is my vision. What is my vision for this particular project? And I was thinking, maybe I was overcomplicating a bit, but I landed on something that really encapsulates my vision. And that was to create a dynamic, engaging, and visually appealing program. I thought that is something that I think most people can get behind. And that was what I was going to get behind, that vision to put out the best product possible for all of our VTM Con attendees. Now, I know I could not do this. I could not fulfill this vision alone by myself. I needed a team. And before I could even start recruiting team members, I had to think about the experience. What experience exactly? I'm talking about the team member experience. I thought about when I do bring on team members, what experience do I want them to have? Do I want them to have an experience where communication is open, that we are organized, that we work well together? Or do I want an experience where everyone's pulling their hair out because we're unorganized, we're not communicative, and things aren't quite happening? So by establishing the kind of experience that I wanted for my team members, which of course was to have great communication, organization, and the tools necessary for them to be successful, that is what led me to, that is what essentially allowed me to hold that experience, hold myself accountable to providing that experience. Once I got those two major pillars down, now it was time to think about the team. How many team members did I need? What were they going to do? Those were the two big questions. After thinking about it, I realized that I need a designer. If I want a visually appealing program, I need someone that's good with design. In addition to that, there's a lot of text in this program, and we cannot afford to have any misspellings, any grammatical issues. So I need someone to review the content as it gets built, to catch those misspellings, those grammatical errors. Maybe there's somebody that needed a DTM next to their name and we left it out. That's what that person was in charge of. I created two simple job descriptions and set feelers out to all the participating clubs. I did have some help as well from Christian, one of the co-chairs, to push out that opportunity along to all the clubs. I finally was able to get a designer and a content editor, and that made the experience that much better for not just for me, but for all of us. And we were able to then go into the project phase. One way that we can approach this is the scattershot approach, where basically we're working on all areas of the program all the time, and hopefully by the end, everything has worked out and it's all together. But in this case, I thought, why not do this in segments? Break it into smaller parts and work on the larger segments, the important segments first. That way we can focus all of our attention to that in particular, and then move on to the next thing based on how we prioritized everything. But in order for this to work, communication had to be there. So we had WhatsApp, we had email, we communicated over Canva, which is where we designed the program. And that had to be there, one, for me to identify which segments I was going to assign to my designer and my content editor, but also to communicate feedback and to provide the information they need in order to work on those individual segments. And the last portion is feedback. After assigning the segment, communicating and sending what each team member needed to complete it, then they would share that with me and we would go through it together and provide feedback. That allowed us to refine the product, give feedback, rework it, and eventually put out the best possible product possible with our collective teamwork. To give you a specific idea of what that looks like in relation to the actual program, this was our priority. This is how we organized our segments. We first started off with the speaker profiles because that was critical to get all of that information and to make sure we had the most accurate information possible. Second, sponsoring clubs. We were able to get that information pretty early on, so that was the second thing we worked on. Lastly, the team leader section. That was something that we started and then worked on gradually as teams became more developed. Lastly, our schedule for both day 1 and day 2, our breakout sessions, and then lastly, our professional ads for our special advisors, co-chairs, and team leads if they would want to share one. I think overall, we were able to accomplish the mission because there was organization, there was communication, and there was a clear vision as to what we were trying to accomplish. I provided the tools necessary for my team members, and I believe that we were able to put the best possible product out for this year's BTMCon. Mr. Toastmaster.
Thank you very much, Lucas. Take advantage of the chat feature to send your thoughts and appreciation to Lucas for his speech. Anything he did well, anything you might suggest, he'll have his evaluation. And now, I saw Jim really concerned after I twitched his arm to be evaluator number 2. And despite I made a mistake, we have a gift. Someone jumped and said, "Don't worry, Hector, I'll take care of speaker number 2. Let me express my appreciation and welcome to the screen Angela Heath with the speech, The Breach." Angela.
Excuse me for a second. I was on the bridge. Those of you who live in Maryland, guess which one? You're right. The Bay Bridge in Maryland is one of the top 10 most frightening bridges in the nation. And I don't even like bridges, but I was on it. You should have seen me. My hands were gripped so tight on the wheel. It is 200 feet. Oh my gosh. Over in bay and ocean, all I know is that the water is like right here. It's right here when you're driving. And so as I'm going up, I'm going to be honest, my heart was pounding, I was sweaty, and I was saying to myself out loud, Angela, you can do this, you can do it, you can do it, but I had tears in my eyes. Guys, crossing the Bay Bridge, I went for contract purposes. So yeah, I admit, I went to get money. But honestly, why I crossed the Bay Bridge is because finally, as old as I am, I'm finally facing my fears one by one. And heights, bridges, small spaces, big trucks right on top of me, that's just a few of the fears that have pushed me around all of my life. But in 2019, I made a declaration and I said, from now on, one by one, I'm going to face those fears. So as I start to swerve to the right and swerve to the left, when I was going across that bridge, I just kept saying, Angela, you can do it. This is the time when you're facing your fears. You're almost there. You don't have much further. And then I started to go down and I could see the land was coming. I was so happy and elated. And I made it. I was so proud of myself. I pulled over. I called my son. He thought I was crazy. I said, I crossed the bridge. And he's like, okay, what about that? But I knew what I had faced. That was a huge fear in my life. And so I ask you, do you have any fears like that? Fears that most people would think would be pretty unreasonable, fears that have pushed you around all of your life, fears that you know you must at some point face. Do you have any fears? Do you have a plan to overcome those fears? Do you have a plan to push yourself beyond what you are comfortable with? So from that one experience, I developed this plan that I'd love to share. It's really quick, just 3 points. First of all, determine in my heart that I won't listen to my body, because my body is going to shake and my body is going to be nervous, but I'm not listening to my body anymore. It's not the boss of me. Number 2, find a declaration. So what I did for the Bay Bridge is I actually looked at YouTube and I watched videos of people going over that bridge, and mine was, Angela, you can do it. I know it sounds crazy, but it was, Angela, you can do it, as I moved across the bridge. So I found that affirmation to help me. And then number 3, do it afraid anyhow. So yes, I didn't get rid of fear. No, I didn't look too pretty going across that bridge. And I think people who saw me, they were probably laughing because I looked a wreck. My mascara was running. You know, my hands were shaking. My knees were even knocking. So I didn't stop the fear. What I was able to do is to do it afraid anyhow. And so fellow Toastmasters, whatever that fear is for you, whatever that thing is that's been pushing you around year after year after year, you may just have to do it afraid anyhow. Back to you, Toastmaster of the day.
Thank you very much, Angela. I encourage everyone to use the chat feature to give your appreciation to Angela and for taking also this opportunity on the spot. Great job. And now we go to one of the most fun parts for me for any Toastmaster meeting, one I really appreciate and have a lot of fun. The impromptu speaking And this time, Carolina is going to lead us in this exercise. Carolina, if you may, please.
Thank you, Hector. Henry David was a free thinker, and now it's your opportunity to free your mind through answering the questions. Remember that you will have between 1 and 2 minutes to answer the questions, so pay attention to the timer. Remember that this is a short speech, so this should have an structure, introduction, body, and conclusion. And I'd really appreciate that you could use the word of the day. So I'm going to start with the questions. And the first question is, it would seem that the 3 things of greatest importance to Henry David were philosophy, nature, and freedom. What is freedom for you? And this question goes for Andrew Byrne.
Of the 3 things that Thoreau thought most important, philosophy, freedom, and nature, which one do I adhere to or believe in? Is that the correct question, Carolina?
What is freedom for you, Andrew?
What is freedom for me?
Yes.
Freedom can be defined in many different ways. Freedom can be as simple as no one is telling me what to do. Freedom could be a decision that one makes of how you think and organize yourself, as was very poignantly pointed out in the movie Shawshank Redemption, when one of the key characters was jailed, in fact, not only jailed, but put into solitary confinement, and yet he seemed happy. And one of the other prisoners said, "Why are you happy? You've been in solitary confinement, you're in jail." He says, "Because nobody can jail my mind. That's where my freedom is coming from. And I appreciate what I'm going through because I have control over my mind and I can make myself feel like I'm free." That's one way of looking at freedom. Freedom can be a cause and cause people to really battle and call to arms. An example of that is from the movie Braveheart, where Wallace was looking to free Scotland from England and led the troops to ask for the freedom. We saw that recently in protests down in Miami and Tampa, where the Cuban American community is asking for freedom from tyranny and oppression from the regime in Cuba. Freedom comes in many forms. It's up to you to define what it means for you. Madam Toastmaster.
Thank you, Andrew. Freedom is so important for everyone. Thoreau believed that the best kind of government is one that governs not at all. According to your thinking, do we need a government, and what should be the role of the government? And this question goes to Graham.
Thank you, Table Topics Master. I appreciate the opportunity to answer this, and I'm going to put myself out here, speaking to people who are mostly in the home of the brave and the land of the free. I'm going to speak in defense of socialism. I'm going to speak in defense of big government. Now, I know that Thoreau spoke about how the best government had a light touch. He wasn't quite as bad as Ayn Rand, but I get the point that's being made. I have to say, I live in a country where we have a government which is deeply involved in almost everything that we do. We have, for example, a nationalized health system. Now, that doesn't mean that we don't have private doctors and private hospitals, but we do have a national health system, which means that every Australian is entitled to health care at which is free at point of use. Now, there is a cost. We each pay 1.5% of our annual income to pay a levy for that, but we think that's worth it. I live in a country where unions have an enormous amount of power, and that means that we don't have at-will employment. We can't be sacked at the whim of an employer. There has to be a good reason. We can't be thrown out of our homes simply because a landlord decides they no longer want us to be there. There has to be a reason. Now, there are downsides to this, I will admit, but I also have to tell you that as somebody who lives in a country where government is involved, at least tangentially, in everything that we do, I'm actually quite happy with that. I will defend socialism. I will defend big government, because the role of the government, we see it, is to protect those who otherwise would be at the markets, or at the mercy of the markets. And for examples of what's wrong with the mercy of the markets, you don't have to look very far, do you? Madam Table Topics Master.
Thank you, Graham. That was a very interesting point of view. According to Thoreau, governments, like all human institutions, are of their very nature corrupt. What do you think about that? And this question goes to Andre. Andre?
Thank you, Madam Table Topics Master. Corruption. I think you asked the right question to the right guy. I'm Ukrainian by birth, and I know a thing or two about corruption and how widespread that could be. Politics, economy, even family life. We all can be corrupted from time to time. In Ukraine, in United States, even in the United Kingdom, where I'm based right now. For example, look at the latest game in Euro. Italians. Some people say that few referees been corrupted. I strongly believe in that. But look at the other points of view. When we look at the socialistic system, which apparently in Australia, there is a corruption as well. Or even if we look into freedom that Andrew Byrne so proclaimed, that could be in here, or it could be in Braveheart. Anywhere corruption can take place. Coming back to my initial point that I'm from Ukraine and the corruption is widespread. Corruption can start in the heart. Corruption can start in our heads. But what we do with that phenomenon is another big question. I personally would say, let's corruption prevail. In my family life, I corrupt my children on a daily basis. If they don't want to go to school, I offer them an incentive. Well, yes, it can be used wisely, or it can hurt really, really deeply. And what we do, I think we all make a personal choice. What is that? Because there is always the other side of any coin in life. Back to you, Madam Table Topics Master.
Thank you very much, Andre. Mary Ruth, could you give me your report about the speakers? Are all qualified?
Yes, Madam Table Topic Master. We have Andrew at 2 minutes, 8 seconds, Graham at 2 minutes, 4 seconds, and Andre at 2 minutes, 6 seconds.
Great, thank you very much. Now it's time for voting. Please send a private message to our vote counter today, Jeanette Francois. Thank you very much. Hector, back to you.
Thank you, Carolina. The timer for the speakers, the timer report has also been posted by Mary Ruth in the chat feature. Don't forget also to send your vote for best speaker. And now let's go to the growing part of the meeting, one that I appreciate a lot. And let me pass the baton to our general evaluator, Marianne Grady.
Why, good evening, fellow Toastmasters. Tonight, my job as general evaluator is to facilitate the feedback portion of the meeting, and that will consist of speech evaluations, our reports for the people who've been watching for the details, and finally, I will give my evaluation of the meeting this evening. So to get us started, our first evaluator of the evening is Mr. Jim Barber, evaluating Lukas Calafell's speech. Jim.
Thank you, Madam General Evaluator. My fellow Toastmasters, our most welcome guests this evening, and especially Toastmaster Lukas Calafell. Lukas, you said beforehand that you told me that you wanted to focus on how well you explained a process without losing your audience. And this is a great challenge to tackle, and you did a good job. It sounds like one goal, but it's actually two. Explain a process and do it without losing your audience. Let's look at the two parts. First part, explaining the process. Here, top notch. You were clear, your presentation was well structured, you were articulate, your slides supported what you were talking about. Basically, your verbals were top notch and your video presence, everything worked. You explained the processes, great. The second part, without losing your audience. You did well here, but you could do better. The problem is, in order not to lose your audience, you really have to capture them. And you didn't do that as well as you could. And I've got two suggestions for you that would help a little bit. The first one, you described, as I say, very well, the processes, what you were doing. That was terrific. You make a terrific technical instructor, but you didn't convey to us how you felt about it. Were you confident? Were you nervous? Were you excited? And this may seem like it's not important, but the thing is, we bond with you on that. If you say, I was nervous, we're going to think, yeah, I would be nervous too. And we're going to listen a little closer about how you handle that. So if you tell us a little bit how you felt about all of this, it would enable us to establish you would establish a little bit better rapport with your audience. The other thing, the other suggestion I have, let's see if I can pull it up here, is this is what your slide looked like. And you can see here the basic problem is that you are a very small part of this slide. And unfortunately, you are the important thing in the presentation. And we didn't see that. It was really hard for us to establish a connection with this little tiny picture of you off at the side. So this is a little more involved, but if you could find a way to put your picture, I like the screen sharing, but if you could find a way to put your picture on the slides, they were good slides, but if you could put your picture on the slide so that you make it a little bit bigger, we wouldn't have to divide our attention between the information and you. We could look at both of them at the same time. As I say, we could establish a better rapport with you, and that would enable you to keep us better. So first part, explain the processes, top notch. Second part, without losing your audience, that could be worked on a little bit, but this was an outstanding presentation. Looking forward to your next one. Madam General Evaluator.
Great wisdom in that evaluation. Thank you, Mr. Barber. Our next evaluator is Ms. Antoinette Trim, and she will be evaluating Angela Heath's speech. Please welcome Antoinette Trim.
Good evening. Excuse me, sorry. Good evening, General Evaluator and my fellow Toastmasters, and especially to Angel. Having been a Toastmaster for some time now, Angel, I know that giving speeches, especially on the virtual platform, would be nothing strange to you. And especially tonight, where you gave a speech at the drop of a hat. I liked your introduction. It made me sit upright. Also like your descriptive language. Because in Tobago, we have extremely small bridges, and it takes about 2 minutes to cross a bridge. But from your description, it appears that the Bay Bridge is a huge one, It's a very long bridge and at the same time, very scary. I like the body of your speech. You reminded me of one of my favorite authors as a child, Enid Blyton's, in Adventures of the Wishing Chair, where you adopted a chronological approach of describing how you overcome your fear. You did your declaration, do it afraid anyhow. And I even believe that you eventually overcame your fear of the bridge, and I guess for other things as well. I would like to recommend just one thing. Maybe you could have asked a rhetorical question, maybe one or two, in order for the audience to become more engaged. All in all, I like your approach. I like your speed at which you speak. You engage the audience very well. Your hand gestures were congruent with your storyline, your eye contact, your transitioning words. I love everything about your speech. I'm looking forward to another speech from you. Angel, back to you, General Evaluator.
Thank you so much, Antoinette, for that wonderful evaluation. And now we are going to hear from our reporters. Mary Ruth, are our evaluators on time?
Yes, Jim had 3:23, Antoinette had 1:59.
All right, then I will ask that you vote for your favorite evaluator by sending your vote in a private chat to Jeanette Francois, our vote counter of the evening. Our next reporter will be our counter, and that will be Ms. Roxanne Hossein.
Thank you, Madam General Evaluator. I did use Lucas's wonderful spreadsheet that you saw last week. However, because of how the numbers crunch out, it's pointless showing you the chart. I am so appreciative, as in I appreciate, and that's me just throwing in the word, okay? How buttoned down this club is. We had one from Carolina, one from Marianne. The other things were marked under other because they weren't technically repeats. It was kind of a stumble over. Maybe I'm going to say I appreciate that type of stammer. And in that we had 4 from Lukas, 1 from Graham Carnes, 2 from Antoinette, and 1 from Jim Barber. The other speakers, you were all clean as a whistle. All of you. There endeth my report. I'm just amazed because this is my Achilles heel.
Thank you, Roxanne. Now, one of the things about online presenters is that we kind of always step in when we need it. And you saw that with Angela earlier, and David Carr did that as well in the grammarian role. So David, please let us know what you have for us tonight. And I really appreciate you stepping in. Thank you.
we do seem to have had plenty of use of the word of the day. I thought Lou slipped it in particularly skillfully right at the beginning, but I can't count how many people appreciated the use of the word appreciate today. Hector, I wanted to mention that in your spiel about Henry David Thoreau, I'm pretty sure you said that he died in 1962 at some point. Just it's an easy slip to make because we're a little bit closer to the 1900s than we are to the 1800s. Everybody did well. I didn't see a lot of foot faults. I thought Angela had very vivid language in her speech. Andre, I appreciated the way he, in his table topic, turned around what he had just heard from Dr. Byrne and said something about this quality could come from a brave heart. So not alluding to the movie, but a brave heart. And also, I particularly loved that he corrupts his children on a daily basis. That was just a nice term and turn of phrase. That's it for me.
Well, thank you, kind sir. Our next reporter is the watcher, and she's got her eyes on you. Please welcome Lysing Zhu.
Thank you, Madam General Evaluator. First, I want to start with audience. The audience are highly engaged. I see people are laughing and smiling and totally paid attention. Then the speaker, I like Lukas' slides, very simple and to the spot. Also, I like Angela, Heath's background and the match of the color of eyeglass at the background. I thought that is very, very interesting. And our evaluators, I like Jim Barber. He has part of the picture there, and then part actually is real background. I don't know how he put it there, but it's very interesting. And also I like Antoinette's bright color shirt. That's really feels like light my evening. On the issue, yeah, I say a lot, but on the issue that our Toastmaster have a lot of quote, which seems flashing, I feel it's a little bit distracting. Back to you, Madam General Evaluator.
Wow, you've had your eye on everybody. Thanks, Lysing. Our chat monitor tonight is, we're going to hear from her again, Angela Heath. Angela, let's see what was going on in the chat box.
General Evaluator, fellow Toastmasters, you guys were kind of quiet in chat tonight. I didn't see very much. A few appreciations were given. We had a couple great tips, however. We learned about OBS Stream Labs, which I thought was really good. So most of us will look that up. I hadn't heard of it. And we also got more instruction about using virtual backgrounds as an advanced feature in Zoom and how we can turn that into an MP4 and time it as we give our speeches. But other than that, you guys were pretty quiet. A lot of welcomes to Barry. So that was sweet. There were a lot of that at the beginning. Back to you, General Evaluator.
I thank you, Ms. Heath. Now, our final reporter of the night is our vote counter, Jeanette Francois, and she is going to let us know who is the best of everything.
Yes, thank you, Mrs. General Evaluator. We had a wonderful evening. I could say that the speeches were great, the table topics were great, and the evaluations were great. It's a pity that we had to vote for the best of the best ones. So the results of the votes for tonight's speeches, table topics, and evaluation. For the speeches, the best speech goes to Lukas. And for the best table topic, it goes to Andriy Smolenko. And for the best evaluation, it's for Jim Barber. So thank you everyone for voting, and back to you, Mrs. General Evaluator.
Thank you, Jeanette. Now it's time for me to give my report. Hector, I know you were new at doing the Toastmaster of the Day role, so I wanted to give you a couple of suggestions. When you begin as Toastmaster, before the meeting starts, you should take attendance, because when we got to that first speaker, you were not aware that he wasn't here. So you do that and you just kind of tick it off, and you know if we have any issues with the schedule. The next thing would be to make it very clear as things change, because maybe the evaluators didn't know who was going to evaluate now, because did evaluator 1 stay in that position, or did evaluator 2 go with the person they were originally scheduled for? So just to be clear and say who is evaluating the speaker when the schedule changes like that. Angela was pretty fantastic stepping up as a speaker at the last minute. Carolina, wonderful themes, table topics, and the responses were terrific. But in a meeting like this, when we're short, more than 3 would be great. So, you know, you should always come. I usually come with 10, and of course you don't use 10 usually, but on a day like today, when we only had 2 speeches, You probably could have come pretty close. So just an idea for you to think about. And that's really all I have today. Everyone did a wonderful job. The reporters and evaluators were terrific. So thank you all. I really appreciate you. Back to you, Mr. Toastmaster.
Thank you very much, Marianne. I really appreciate the feedback. This is the first time I get to be a Toastmaster online presenters. Even though I had been Toastmaster many times in my own club, oh my God, looks like this was my first ever opportunity as Toastmaster of the day. And I just show everyone how you shouldn't do it. That means there's only one way to go, and it's to improve. And I hope that's the case. My mentor and the person who invited me to this club told me Toastmaster is a safe place to fail, and fail I did today. I want to really appreciate the fantastic job everybody did. I want to apologize to Carolina. She had way more questions prepared, and I was so nervous I got confused. I'm in a different time zone, and I thought, oh my God, we're running late. So I didn't let enough time for Carolina to ask their questions. Anyway, I can only see this an opportunity to improve. And if we had a great meeting, it's because it was because of all of you and all the roles that supported me and carried this meeting to success. I want to thank you for the opportunity. And with more than 25 minutes, almost 25 minutes on the clock, I'm gonna pass this meeting to our president, Louis Brown. Thank you very much.
I have more questions if you want to practice.
Actually, you know what, Carolina, that's not a bad idea, because I was going to ask, it seemed a lot of folks spoke. Who didn't speak tonight?
I know who didn't speak.
Okay. Well, you know what?
I know.
Maybe after we sort of conclude, we might just throw in a couple more. I wonder if this is a record, though, for our earliest closing meeting. And not that, I know, Hector, you did explain that you were a little off on the time, but quite frankly, even with maybe 2-3 more topics, we still would have been quite ahead of schedule. So first of all, yes, thank you, Hector, for being, your first time as Toastmaster of the day. You still did a wonderful job. Marianne's feedback was spot on. And in my opinion, there is no failure, only feedback. And as you clearly stated yourself, we can only improve. All of us can certainly improve in that area. Thank you to our wonderful speakers, Lukas and Angela. Angela, thank you so much for stepping up. That was really, really nice of you. I'm thinking, oh my goodness, I have to have a back pocket speech ready to go at any time, because it really does come in handy. Thank you again for that. The board is having a meeting this coming Sunday. That's when we meet, believe it or not, Sunday mornings. Because we're so busy during the week, that's like the only time we can meet. With that said, and more or less on an ongoing basis, I'd love to hear back from all of our members. I remember when I was an area director, I had to visit every club, and I even did as best I could to reach out and speak to as many members that I did know as possible. And I'd like to do a little bit of that with our club, is really reach out to individual members and just ask how things are going and so forth, which I may do over the ensuing year, so be prepared. But feel free to simply email any of the officers in terms of some ideas you may have. We are an incredible club. We just do so well, so much, so professional, so great that sometimes I figure, oh my goodness, where can we go from here? I think I mentioned at the last meeting that it just feels like we're at the Simone Biles level, and we could certainly grow, but it just seems like there's, what new things can we do? So feel free to offer ideas, and I think that would be much appreciated. One announcement in terms of the Toastmaster International Conference, or annual conference, coming up August 23rd to the 28th. I believe Andy mentioned this last time as well. $25, I think, is the price. Very reasonable there. If any of you would like to help with some of our subcommittees, the Education Committee, the Membership Committee, PR Committee, so much of what we do is automated thanks to Dave, our webmaster, and now our PR person, that quite frankly, that covers and relieves us of so much time. But we have some ideas on things that we'd like to do over the course of the year, and I'm sure our officers would love to have some assistance help them out. So feel free to reach out to any of them. Somebody mentioned tech tips, and Roxanne, I know you did one at VTM Con. I'd love to learn, say, Jim, how you did your background. I'd love to hear, Hector, how you put together your PowerPoint for that background as well. I think that's probably a great thing. All of us could learn from other members on things that we don't know. And quite frankly, those are things that I don't know. It'd be great to have a speech on those things, a presentation to help us grow further. That ends my particular set of announcements and so forth. We have a guest with us this evening. For those of you who may have noticed, Barry, I'd love to hear what you gained from our meeting today.
Well, thank you, Mr. President. Please go ahead.
Oh, sorry. And I was just going to say, I know you shared some information about yourself in the chat. Feel free to share it again.
Oh, no problem. Hi, everyone. I'm Barry Wells, located in Maryland. And actually, I'm here as a result of Angela Heath. We have actually met in person a couple of years ago. We're connected on LinkedIn, and she announced her participation in the conference a few weeks ago. And I thought, oh, yeah, sure, let me sign up. And I came and I went, and I thought it was interesting. And I thought, well, they meet on Mondays, and you're right, your automation process is fantastic. I registered, click, click, click. It was on my calendar. I got the reminder, and I'm also VPPR of a club. And I'm like, yeah, I got to follow up with Dave to see how he did that. So very slick, very nice, well done. And I've been a Toastmasters maybe 2 years. And although I am a professional speaker and trainer and gregarious and conversational, I didn't think that Toastmasters could help me. That's why I think I didn't join. And I was wrong. I am learning quite a bit. And there's one thing about speaking when I have 2 or 3 or 4 days, very different when I have 5 to 7 minutes. So the idea of, saying what needs to be said in a way that is clear, succinct, enjoyable, delightful, interesting, definitely takes some skill and practice, and I'm learning, and I'm just delighted to be here, and thank you for having me.
Thank you very much. We appreciate you joining us today. Very nice. Does anyone else have any announcement, anything they'd like to share? Oh, Angela.
So Toastmasters, I am going to invite you. Remember when I did this speech, I said I was doing a master class. It's actually tomorrow. So if you would like to sign up, I am going to be training on how to publish your message and productize it. So it's tomorrow, 12:30 Eastern time. I'll put it in chat if anybody would like to come. Quite a few Toastmasters are coming.
Excellent. I bought your book.
Wonderful. Okay, folks, thanks again for being here today. We look forward to seeing you next week. Our meeting is officially closed.